Yo, what is up everyone? Tachi here. So today we are going to do the long-awaited redo of the Jumpstart guide. This is obviously mostly because the new Octo patch is going to add both a 5-star mage option as well as obviously the 2 Octos, Belieth and Seto. So we are going to redo it. Obviously the meta has changed since then, so I'm going to do this very simply, similar to like before. I will strike off any character that is pretty much irrelevant in the current meta and will not be used in the foreseeable future, obviously pending a companion of some sort that I'm unaware of. So for example, if Elenir gets a companion that makes her broken, sorry, can't do anything about that. We don't know anything about it. So obviously we are going to start off Siegmund, trash, Hanya, trash, Jhin, trash, Elenir, trash, and Wilhelmina, trash, and Anastasia, trash. Obviously, Anastasia has her uses in obviously PvE. You do use her in one of the world bosses, if I'm not mistaken, for the increased attack, whatever it is called, increased damage. But other than that, you're not really going to use her, and she's replaceable in pretty much everything anyways. Same for Wilhelmina. Wilhelmina is used, that one world boss, the one that has basically pseudo death guard, but you could just replace her with like BDM or something. You'll lose a little bit of damage, but it's not like she was the main DPS anyways. And obviously Elenir, Siegmund, Hanya, and Jhin are just terrible, and Foxy as well. Other than those, you're pretty much left with 3 options: Davi, Christina, and Elijah. Elijah's only use is pretty, well, I can't say only, mostly in global server. She's used in Guild War. Now, in Korea, people do use her a lot in Arena, but we obviously have not copied that. They've been doing that actually for quite a few months now, so realistically speaking, if we were going to use her in Arena, most of us would have already swapped to using her by now, because it was like multiple patches ago that people in Korea started using her, and we have not done that. So overall, unless you're like an established account and you already have Davi and Christina, she's probably like a very low option. So we're going to give her a 3, and now you're left with Davi and Christina. Now, the problem with both of them is that to use them efficiently, you do want plus 15. This is even more so for Christina. Now, Davi can get away in Arena even at plus 9. She's actually very good and very strong early game for most players in Arena specifically, because first of all, she has a charm counter and she has like a pretty high amount of defense to the point where she's probably not going to die to most things. So she's very strong, even at plus 9. And then at plus 12, she becomes even better until plus 14. And then 15, obviously, for the 3 range. So depending on your skill as a player and what you want, she could be your best option. Now, that being said, with the advent of Seto, Christina with Belieth combo is probably the most likely way for you to actually deal with Setos. Otherwise, you're pretty much just going to be in a dick slapping contest to see who Seto dies first. Because Christina plus Belieth basically hard counters him. So personally, I still say not much has changed. I would still say Christina is the first choice with Davi as a solid second. But do keep in mind that Christina is actually very weak before plus 15. Like, I have her on my other account, and in Arena, it's a fucking nightmare. She still kills some things, but with your runes being so shit as a newbie player and like dying to every counter, she's very weak. Even as an initiator, she's really not that strong until I get her plus 15, which obviously is, some people probably will point out, requires you to have soul gear. So yeah, you pretty much get it. I still say that she's probably the main priority because of Seto. So we're going to end that one there, and we are going to move on to the next one. Now, when it comes to supporters, obviously the 4-star option is not that important. Pretty much all of these except for Vincent, Elijah, probably even, I probably wouldn't even say Cuick is a great option here unless you already have a lot of these other ones. Even John, I probably wouldn't select. So obviously, this is gonna depend on what you're going for, but Anais is pretty decent for, you know, her debuff stuff. She's used in quite a few things, especially story mode if I'm not mistaken, but again, she's pretty replaceable. I've already shown my form for my other account. You really don't need her, so she's definitely like almost an X and like a maybe depending on the state of your account. Now Ebony with her companion is actually like one of the strongest units in the game. I think she and Serenity are pretty much tied first, just because their uses are so like wide. I would even say Ebony is like slightly better with certain team comps in Novice Arena, and you could use her a lot in like Evil Castle and whatnot. Cerubia is used obviously for her. She's using two things. One, in Guild War to make your unit hit front. And then the second main usage is probably World Boss. I use her in Arcstar for the increased damage, but obviously she's replaceable by Veronia if you happen to have her. Nerissa is like probably the lowest priority here, and so is Ceres. But at least Ceres, you use her with the Kali combo in like 3 world bosses. So, I'm gonna go with a 3 there. I'm gonna put Cerubia at second just because you will likely use her like a lot more, especially in Guild War. Now, obviously, you don't need to. You don't actually need her, but if your choices are between, you know, you already have Ebony Max, you already have Serenity Max, I would probably pick Cerubia over Ceres, just because when it comes to Ceres, you really could just grab a solo copy of her for the set bonus for the HP and World Boss, and then Nerissa is like 4th place, like legit. She's very useful for the Agi for certain stages, but like certain world bosses, but honestly I haven't really used her in world boss in a long time. At least as an older player, I suppose she might make world boss a little bit easier if you're a newbie. Same could go for Anais, because she also gives a lot of defense and healing and whatnot, but for the most part, I would say she's not that great. So overall, just pick between Ebony and Serendia, and if you happen to have both of them max, which pretty much means that you are not a newbie, I would pick either Cerubia or Ceres, with Cerubia being the main priority there. Now on to the Defender. Now this one is a little easier. Zenith not needed, Seer not needed, Archon not needed, Diomarin not needed, although Diomarin is actually required, not replaceable, required for certain stages in Evil Castle, but he is usable in those stages at +0, so keep that in mind. Kaelin not needed, Aaron not needed, Leckless is sort of usable, and I'm gonna put that as a question mark. Which leaves you with the 3 main choices for most people. Obviously, Leckless here being the good option if you happen to either already have all 3 of them with like a Glacier Max or something like that. Otherwise, I would not pick Leckless here. Pretty much, Glacier here is 100% requires +15. If you want her to be good, like actually good, she needs +15. And despite what people say, like, oh well, but she's countered by Levia, she's countered by Levia at +12. If you're a new player, how many people do you think are gonna have Levia +12? Realistically speaking, how many people? Not many. So that's not exactly a great defense. Also, on top of that, if you say Glacia's bad because she dies to pretty much to Levia +12, what the fuck do you think Kali does against a Levia +12? Oh, Nothing. Right, I forgot about that. Right, so that's not really a defense, because the only thing that survives a Levy of plus 12 is a a Lucius plus 12. That's it. Everything else dies. A Lucius plus 10 will die to it as well. So not really a great argument for why she sucks. Cowley, like I said before, you really only need her plus 0. Now that being said, she's very strong at plus 9 in the early arena stages, similar to Davi. So she will make it easier for you to get to, like, I don't know, gold, maybe plat or something like that, if that is your fancy. So I would still probably put her at like a second, with Glacier being first. And Cecilia now. Cecilia is actually the only unit here that no matter what the meta does, like Glacier and Kali obviously have faded off in the meta, Cecilia is always going to have her place for now, because she's the only unit with AoE absorption. So no matter what anyone says, I would even say that she has a higher place than Kali does, because nothing does what she does, right? Kali's an HP tank. You could replace her with Voltor, right? Obviously you need her for World Boss still, until obviously they release more new units with higher HP, but for the most part you can replace her with Voltor, especially in arena against Seto. Yeah, just use Voltor. Glacia, she's not that great anymore at plus 15. Even in the high end of arena, you're pretty much not going to use her. You'll probably use something else. Even Calarun might be a little bit better than her. Obviously Calarun also is weak against Levy plus 12, but even then, not that used. But Cecilia is always going to have her place, even in UA, in arena, in underground, everything. Basically in every single situation, Cecilia is always going to have her place. So I would still put her at like a 1.5, with Glacier being the 1, just because I feel that Glacier is always going to have her use against certain teams and certain usage, especially in the mid game for players, which is like, if you're actually playing, it's around like a month to 2 months in. Judging by my own progression, I'm pretty my account is pretty scuffed. Let's just say that. So I think this is, yeah, this is good. I think this is fine. If you don't have anything, if you're a fresh player, I think Glacia and rushing her plus 15 is doable. Although again, I would still say that pulling on the legend banner is more important as a new player once the Octos come out. But I think that you're eventually going to have to pull companions anyways. I think Glacia is still going to be a better choice here over Kali. And Kali, I would say you are better off just pulling a plus 0 copy of her like I did. Even better if you just reroll for her, or obviously an Octo, that would be a better choice. And Cecilia, if you have the other two, or if you just have Glacia and already maxed, or like you're going to max her, I think Cecilia is a better choice here. So let's move on to the next one. The 4-star Magician. This one's actually even easier. Pretty much, nah, nope, yeah, no, 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 and then it leaves it to these, right? So these are just World Boss. This is World Boss as well. Hell is pretty much barely used in Novice anymore. Honestly, I can't even get that much use out of her even right now in like Bronze, Silver, like even towards the upper end of Silver. She's not that useful. I would kind of say she's like a no, but she's still pretty useful in Evo Castle and in some of Campaign. Now, that being said, you actually don't need her in either of those because you can still replace her as well. So she's going to be probably the lowest priority. How many units are here? Right, 5. So let's put her at 5. Choco, pretty much only used in Guild War at this point. although I think I've seen some people barely run him in arena, and that's pretty much as like a hard counter. So let's pretty much just call that he's just a Guild War unit, low priority, number 4. The main units here that people are probably going to use is going to be Zarka, because he is the main unit for debuffing required for Daggeron, whatever it's called, the giant golem, followed by probably Charlotte and Esther tied at second. I feel that it's a little weird that I'm missing number 3, but yeah, sorry guys. They're pretty much tied because they're both used for an almost equal amount of world bosses, I think. Because I believe Charlotte's used in Octo, and you could use her in one of the other ones as well. Like, it's a very tied usage. They're both pretty much, all of these mages are pretty much useless nowadays outside of the world boss ones and the one Guild War unit. So that's pretty much the options there. If you are a new player, I would say Zarka is your best choice just for world bosses, because he's going to help you in 3 of them, I think. Right? I think it's 3, maybe 4. Let's call it 3. He's going to be used in the most world bosses, and you really do need him to be max. You actually need him plus 10 for clearing, for graduating one of them, but he'll make your life just so much easier, so definitely pick him. I picked Hell. Terrible idea. Don't do it. Definitely Zarka is a better choice here, and then Esther and Charlotte. But let's move on to the next one. Now the next one is 5-star supporters. 5-star supporters is also pretty easy. Not used, not used, not used, not used, not used, not used. So let's break it down to what they're used for. Themis is only used in world boss at this point, and she's pretty much the lowest priority, so that's number 4. She's pretty much just you already have Michaela, Flori, and Veronia max, then pick Themis. In terms of usage, Michaela is still used quite a bit in arena, although I imagine that her usage is going to go down now that people are probably going to start building up Belieth, because you could just run Belieth with Refi. So that's kind of iffy there. Unsure how people feel about that. I would probably put her now at either 2nd or 3rd place. So I'm actually going to tie her with Floria, because I think Floria is just as good if you have certain units. So if you don't have a lot of units, if you're new, I think Michaela and Veronia are better, with Veronia obviously being first. Michaela is pretty much, to me, if you have less units, like if you don't have Lude or you don't have Albion with Gran and whatnot, I think Michaela's slightly better. But if you're later on in the game, you have those units, you need her for world boss anyways, I think Floria's a good second choice. So I'm gonna put this one at like a 2.5. Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel there. Veronia obviously is just a really strong unit. You obviously use her in world boss, you use her in Guild War, you use her in arena, just to like make one unit, first of all, like unkillable by reflex, and then second of all, just do like a ridiculous amount of damage. You also use her in or at least I use her in world boss, like I said, to replace Cerubia. So definitely like the top choice there, with Floria being second, because Floria in arena and Guild War is going to require like a very certain like set of units for you to actually use her, which is not exactly newbie friendly. Like her by herself, if you're like on a month-old account, unless you have Lyudmila or Albion and Gran, you're never going to use her. So she's pretty useless outside of world boss. And then Michaela is just, she has decent buffs, but she's going to go down because there's already 2 really good supports. So the chances of you not having Rafithia and or Belieth is so rare that, yeah, it's just generally not worth using her. I do still use her now in World Boss for the attack interference and stat buffs, but it's just one World Boss, and that's Arcstar. And I think you could probably replace her and not lose too much damage and still be able to graduate. So not really a huge priority there. So let's move on to the next one, 4-star Warriors. This one's pretty easy. Pretty much it's gonna be like this nowadays. So I think pretty much overall Corette and Rito are the best choices here. Corette is useful in a normal arena for the very early game, just because you're probably not gonna have an X. And if not normal, you can still use her in novice. You can use her in story mode. Just overall, she's pretty much useful for any time you ever need to skip X. And if you don't happen to have Gunther yet, and even when you do have a Gunther, she's still very strong at +9, +10. Slightly stronger than Gunther in some situations, so definitely there. Riedel obviously is like your budget skip Valze. She's used in Patan. She's used in Novice Arena. She's used in some stories. She's used in World Boss. Orien is used in some World Bosses as well. So probably third there for her. Violette is pretty much just used in some story. Pretty much where you need her to kill things with high HP because of decomposition, and then some evil castles. So she's probably a slightly lower priority for me than Orien, because I feel that the rewards from certain evil castles that require her are like not as high a priority in terms of like diamonds and whatnot rewards that you get compared to what being able to clear World Boss can do. And then you're pretty much left with just Leon and Zakan. Both of them are used for a very similar purpose. Leon obviously is a very counter pick in UA and Guild War, because if they have an X shape in the back and they're not taunting, or even if they are taunting, it can still kill something like an Abin Gran or whatnot. So still an overall, it's a pretty good choice there. And then Zakan is just to kill skip units or even front units with 100% defense, because he does fixed damage. So overall, I'd say Zakan probably at 5 and then Leon at 6. Although, depending on where you are in the game, Leon could very well be like first or second here, because he's just that useful in UA, and UA is probably like the second best game mode in this game behind Guild War. And sometimes it's actually better than Guild War, to be honest. So definitely, like, if you're later on in the game, like 3-6 months in, I think that he's probably a better unit to go for here. And you probably have everyone else maxed out already by then anyways, or near max. So now we're to the final choice, the 4-star Defender. Now, this is actually pretty easy as well nowadays. Pretty much most of this is just not used. Grace, her only use is Guild War. That's pretty much it. Although actually, now that I think about it, she might actually be required in some stages of story mode later on. But other than that, not really. So she's probably my lowest priority. Grossa and Martina are both used in World Boss, so that's pretty iffy there. I think probably Grossa has a higher priority because you can use him for transport bosses, and then Martina is used for the increased damage. And then obviously Iris is number 1 here, because I mean, honestly, have you guys seen Novice Arena? It's pretty hard to not run into an Iris, especially plus 14, 15. If you happen to have all of these, The next best choices are either going to be Denarisa, who's required for certain Evil Castle and story mode stages, and BDM, who likewise is required in certain Evil Castle and story stages. And you can also do a Dagdaron or whatever. And then it comes down to the actual legend choice. Who do you pick for your legend choice? This is going to be a solid no. Nardis is probably going to be a no, mostly because he dies or is useless to pretty much every single unit that's going to be in the main meta. So, for example, he dies to Gran, he dies to Seto, he dies to skeletons, he doesn't kill Valtor, he pops Helga and doesn't get his memorize, so he doesn't even get the good part of his skill at plus 12. He doesn't get that because he's probably going to pop her if he doesn't die. So overall, if you're going to use him, just grab him from AC and use him at like plus 0. Pretty much is how that goes. And then we're left with these choices, right? Unfortunately for Gran, she's actually fallen out of favor a little bit. She's probably going to be my lowest priority here. And then it just becomes between Refi and Angelica, right? Now, this is going to depend on what you pick for your free Octo as well. If you pick Belieth, I think that you don't need to go Refi. If you pick Seto, I think that Refi is still a slightly better choice, but Angelica is also a very good choice with Seto because they counter different sets of units. So Seto can deal with 100% defense units, which are typically what blocks Angelica, and he's a skip unit. And Angelica deals with the high HP units, which Seto can't deal with, not only with his counter, but even with his normal attack. He can't kill them at all. So I think they're pretty good combined together, but if you pick Seto, you don't have a support, right? Which could be a problem for you, right? Because you don't have that massive AoE support that most people will have. You don't have Refi and you don't have Belieth, so at that point it just becomes like, how far in the game are you, right? If you're a brand new player and you pick Belieth, pick Angelica. If you're a brand new player and you pick Seto, pick Rafithia, because you need a support. You're gonna need the support. Refi is not gonna fall that much, even with Belieth being as good as she is, because she's just something that is not replaceable right now. She has great buffs, and she just covers such a large range. You really can't replace her unless you have Belieth, and even then, people are still using her, right? So I think overall, Rafithia's first place with Angelica second. If you are later in the game, right? If you, for whatever reason, say, are looking at what should I swap my legend books to? I have a bunch of plus on Valfern or something else that I don't want anymore. Which, by the way, speaking of Valfern is actually really good right now. So do keep that in mind. He's actually very strong. So he is an option to transfer into. If you happen to have a Nardis or a Gran or something, or an Alec, especially an Alec, if you happen to have an Alec that you want to move skill books from, I would highly suggest building Angelica if you haven't already, because you probably already have a Refi unless your name is Starry. Other than Starry, everyone has a Refi plus 15 already, right? So if you are that person and you're not going to build another Octo, or your Octos are already ready, for example, I already have Lucius plus 10 and I have Levia plus 10. So I'm already transferring over to 6 Devils at this point. If you are like that, I would definitely suggest building up Angelica, unless you're going to also unless you're also going to build Belieth, which is definitely an option. Don't get me wrong. That's probably what I'm going to do. I'm going to move my skill books over from Gran and Nardis, and I'm going to put them on Belieth. So I have Lucius, Belieth, and Levia. So I'm going to be pretty stacked with that. but I realize that not everyone is in that situation, so definitely it's going to depend on what you have and what your game plan is. Obviously, Octos always have priority over 6 devils. Definitely. Even Velford is now used to some extent to counter Seto, so do keep that in mind. Now let's move on to the next one. This is part of the actual update for the Octos. They are giving away a +9 5-star mage, right? So it's actually pretty simple here, right? Garanoth, you don't really need him. Lillian, waste, right? And then it comes down to these units, right? Hijin is not really used. He's required in like 4 stages of Evil Castle. So how many units do I have here? This is 8, right? He's probably the lowest priority. Oh yeah, let me remove Edwin as well. Didn't even notice. So that's actually going to be a 7, right? So I'm going to remove these pretty much at this point. He's the lowest priority. Hijin is not used ever. He's used in like 3 stages of Evil Castle, maybe 4. So you can pretty much ignore him. And then Eldora and Wester are used in world bosses. So they're used in Arcstar, right? But Arcstar is actually like you can do it with other units. So overall, I'd probably say that it's like a 6 and 5. Ai is used in one world boss as well, although you probably could use her in another one. She's mostly used in Dagdaron for the clear. I don't think you can clear her. I don't think you can clear without her, but you can clear with her at +0 depending on what other units you have. So I'll probably put her at a 4. And then it comes down to these, right? What's her name? Catherine. Catherine is probably one of the strongest choices here for the upcoming meta if you have Believ, because she can replace Christina to kill Seto. And obviously she can also somewhat deal with Lucius as well because of her range and whatnot. So she's a pretty decent choice. Overall, I'd say she's still below Frisia, right? But the obvious first choice being Valtor, because Valtor is just so stupidly tanky that very few units kill him. Pretty much it's just Eden, Angelica, and well, I suppose Levy as well now. So Eden, Levia, Angelica, and I think that's about it really. That's pretty much all that kills him. He deals with pretty much everything else, anything else that's skip, anything that's front, anything that just doesn't deal, like literally 50, 60, sometimes even I've seen him up to like 200k. If you don't deal enough damage, you can't deal with him. Obviously he can't solo your team, but he is just very difficult to kill, which is exactly what he's used for. He's a roadblock, so he's the highest priority out of these units. And then we are gonna go on to the final and most important choice. What Octo do you choose, right? This is gonna be hard to say, but I think overall Seto is just so much better that it's not even a joke. It actually is not even hard to say. It's just I would like to say that Believ is a decent choice, but you're better off just building her, because unlike Seto, Believ can be used at earlier plus in combination with Rafithia, right? So there's no real reason to choose her as your +9, even unless you already have Seto, or you can build him like really quick or something. Like there's very like niche situations depending on how far in the game you are, But overall, Seto is just so much better and so much more usage. Whether it's Guild War or Arena or World Arena or whatever, it doesn't matter. He's used so much that there's like pretty much no reason not to go him. On top of the amount of players that already have Belieth, which is a surprising amount of people, because no one fucking uses her outside of Guild War. So yeah, it's not even a competition. I really wish it was, but it's just not. Seto is just by far the best unit to choose here. Now, that being said, I'm probably gonna go for Seto and then build Belieth. So regardless, for endgame players, you're gonna want both of them anyways. But the priority of the units that you're building is gonna be like this, right? It's gonna be Lucius first, right? Lucius number 1, right? I think Levia is probably number 2 because you need to build a Levia to deal with the Lucius, like pretty much. Then it's gonna be Seto, and then 4th is Belieth. So unfortunately for most people, the main unit that you should be building is actually not even a selectable unit, which is, I mean, it's really not a surprise, but Lucius is gonna be just so impossible to deal with. Even if you have a really strong Seto or a really strong Belieth, you're gonna need something to deal with the Lucius. And Levy is his direct counter, and also to some extent she deals with Seto, because if Seto is the main target, right, Levia does kill him because she goes through the guard. Unfortunately, obviously, with that being said, if Levia gets taunted out and she actually hits Seto with a side tile, he'll live and she'll die. So that's kind of like their thing there. But overall, Levia, between the range, which pretty much nothing can do that. The fact that she goes through guard now, so if anyone has a lower Lucius, she'll just insta kill. If they happen to have a different type of guard unit like Glacia or whatnot, kills that. She has 100% defense now, so she doesn't die to pretty much, let's see, what are the units? Angelica, Chris, whatnot. So you can use her as a skip tank to some extent. And then Seto is just he lives through 9 hits, I think, or 9 or 10 hits. He does pretty decent damage. Skip fixed damage is very strong, and it covers a lot of bases for certain formations. He does a fixed damage counter that does like 15 to 20,000 damage. So pretty much anything that touches him that's not named a tank, so if it's not Valtor or Lucius or something like that, it doesn't have a bunch of HP, it's gonna die. Kali as well. I suppose Kali would survive if she hits him, although she might die to the burn. Pretty much everything out of those 3 is just so much better than Belieth that there's really no point in picking her. So overall, that's gonna be my choices. If you have any questions, just hit me up in the comments down below. I will answer them. I have probably like 400 something pools worth. I'm going to do a massive summon on Twitch if you guys are interested in watching that. It will be up live once the game comes up from maintenance on the 28th. So if you guys want to watch that, I will have my Twitch link down below. Either way, guys, that is the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. If you want to see future content, hit the subscribe button. I'm out. Have a nice day.